It might be early days yet, but it seems that 2024 will be an unforgiving year for losing our music icons. Here are a few of the artists we've lost this year so far. Toby Keith was the very definition of a rough-and-tumble, no-nonsense country singer. Although he rose to fame in the 90s, his aesthetic was much more reminiscent of the likes of Merle Haggard and Waylon Jennings than any of his contemporary peers. As a teenager in Oklahoma, he worked as a rodeo hand and in the oil fields, plying his musical trade in the local honky-tonks. He managed to get a demo tape to Alabama producer Harold Shedd, who got Keith into the studio to record his debut self-titled 1993 album. That record, featuring hit singles like Should've Been a Cowboy and A Little Less Talk and a Lot More Action, went double platinum, but that was just the beginning of Keith's success. Rejecting the efforts of his label to push him in a poppy direction, Keith bolted for DreamWorks Records in 1999. There, his first 3 albums with the label sold a combined 10 million copies. Meanwhile, Keith's politics kept him in the headlines. A public dust-up with the Chicks and controversy over his post-9/11 single Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue did nothing to damage his image as a straight-shooting symbol of Americana. In 2022, Keith announced that he'd been diagnosed with stomach cancer. He died on February 5, 2024, at the age of 62. David Soul achieved the majority of his fame as an actor. He is, of course, the man who played Hutch on the iconic 70s cop series Starsky and Hutch. If he hadn't made it as an actor, though, Soul could have picked a couple of other avenues to fame. For example, he turned down a contract to play baseball for the Chicago White Sox, opting instead to attend college in Mexico. Upon his return, he chose to fashion himself as a folk singer, playing Mexican tunes in coffee houses. He even managed to get on the bill, opening for such legends as Frank Zappa, The Loving Spoonful, and The Byrds. Soul's music career didn't really take off until he rose to fame on television, however. Speaking about Starsky and Hutch, he later said,
"And I guess it's given me a certain amount of usable power to do some of the things that I personally want to do."
In 1976, he released his debut album, which yielded the #1 hit single Don't Give Up on Us. A talented writer and singer, Soul dropped 4 more albums and toured the world with his backing band. Although his latter work didn't enjoy the success of that monster debut, Soul continued to appear on the stage and screen throughout the next couple of decades. His last feature appearance was a cameo in the James McAvoy movie Filth in 2013. Soul passed away on January 4, 2024 from natural causes. He was 80 years old. A bassist, guitarist, and self-taught recording engineer, Del Palmer deployed his talents on records by artists from Roy Harper to Midge Ure. By far the most sizable chunk of his discography, however, was devoted to the work of Kate Bush, one of the most idiosyncratic and beloved recording artists of all time. It was Palmer who engineered Bush's 1985 album Hounds of Love, which yielded the single Running Up That Hill. This classic hit the top 10 in 34 countries as recently as 2022, thanks to its prominent placement in the 4th season of Stranger Things. A gifted bassist and songwriter, Palmer even released a solo album, Leap of Faith, in 2007, but he saved most of his best work for Bush, with whom he was also romantically linked for a time. He either played bass, sat behind the boards, or did both for Bush for over a quarter of a century, working on every one of her albums from Lionheart in 1978 to 50 Words for Snow in 2011. On January 5th, Palmer passed away from undisclosed causes at the age of 71. Bush was quick to eulogize her friend on her website, writing, "He was a big part of my life and my work for many years. It's going to take a long time to come to terms with him not being here with us. I'm going to miss him terribly." The consummate rock drummer, James Kottak came up on the Louisville scene, playing drums in local bands as a teenager. Upon moving to Los Angeles, his skills scored him a number of gigs. He soon latched on to Kingdom Come, playing on the first 2 albums, and briefly joined hard rock legends The Cult.
Back in the 80s, there's no question James was the top dog.
Soon, though, he found his true home as a member of the Scorpions, one of the most successful hard rock bands to ever come out of Germany. Kottak became the first American to join their ranks in 1996, and he played with the band for 2 decades, departing in 2016 due to alcohol-related issues. Kottak had struggled with those issues for years. In 2014, he spent a month in jail in Dubai for drinking without a license and allegedly making derogatory remarks toward Muslims, a charge that Kottak strenuously denied. After his sentence was complete, he vowed to stop drinking once and for all. On January 9th, the Scorpions announced via Facebook that the drummer had passed away at the age of 61. The band's statement read, "James was a wonderful human being, a great musician and loving family man. He was our brother from another mother and will be truly missed." Post-punk act The Soft Moon were every bit as dangerous, aggressive, and hardcore as their name suggested they were not. The group was the brainchild of vocalist and multi-instrumentalist Luis Vasquez, their only constant member and sole creative force. Vasquez had made no secret of the fact that his LA childhood was a rough one. In an interview with Metal magazine, he said, "We were poor and my family was pretty violent. I grew up in bad neighborhoods, so I was exposed to a lot of dark realities. That's why my music sounds the way it does." Vasquez spent time living and recording in Venice, Berlin, and Joshua Tree before returning to LA LA in 2023, and it was there that he met his untimely end. On January 21st, the Los Angeles Times reported that the previous week, Vasquez had been found dead of an apparent fentanyl overdose along with 2 other people. Vasquez was only 44 years old. When reggae music began to emerge on the international scene in the late 60s and early 70s, it was defined in large part by its booming drums and bass guitar beats. That signature sound came about when legendary artist and producer Lee Scratch Perry decided to loan out the rhythm section of his studio's house band to an up-and-coming new band, Bob Marley and the Wailers. Aston Barrett, known by his nickname Family Man, became the band leader of the iconic unit and remained with the group throughout its many lineup changes, and jumped to Island Records in the 70s. After Bob Marley's death in 1981, Barrett continued on, working with the likes of Burning Spear, Alpha Blondie, and Rita Marley.
The reggae music, it is the heartbeat of the people.
On February 3rd, Barrett's son announced via social media that his father had passed away while hospitalized. The 77-year-old musician died from heart failure after a series of strokes. Founded in Detroit in 1964, the Motor City Five were at the time a rock band unlike nearly any other. Only their Detroit brethren the Stooges, led by the famously iconoclastic Iggy Pop, compared to the band's wildly aggressive, ultra-loud, anti-authoritarian proto-punk. At the heart of it all was the twin guitar attack of Fred Sonic Smith and Wayne Kramer, whose innovative implementation of feedback and distortion during the band's early years squeezed some of its more pop-minded members. During the late 60s, the MC5 positioned themselves as the radical arm of the peace movement. Their incendiary, profanity-laden live shows became the stuff of Detroit legend. After 3 albums between 2 labels, however, the band flamed out, disbanding after a New Year's Eve gig in 1972. Kramer periodically reconvened the band over the years, and in 2022 he announced the MC5's first new album in over 50 years, dropping a single featuring Rage Against the Machine's Tom Morello. Unfortunately, this project is now in limbo. On February 2nd, 2024, Kramer passed away from complications of pancreatic cancer. On Instagram, he was eulogized by Morello, who wrote, "Brother Wayne Kramer was the best man I've ever known. He possessed a one-of-a-kind mixture of deep wisdom and profound compassion. The MC5 basically invented punk rock music." Vocalist Melanie Safka, known professionally simply as Melanie, began her career as a struggling singer-songwriter in the late 60s, paying her dues in small venues and releasing 2 unsuccessful singles for Columbia Records. Then, in 1969, everything began to change for the singer. She hooked up with a new manager and dropped her debut album, Born to Be.
You get an idea and just start strumming, and all of a sudden the whole thing will come down just at one time.
In August that year, she found herself taking the stage at Woodstock. Inspired by that experience, she released Lay Down, Candles in the Rain in 1970, a tune that became her first top 10 single. Melanie quickly followed this up with more successful singles, and by the summer of 1971, she was riding high on the success of the ultra-catchy, whimsical single Brand New Key, her first US #1. In a later interview, Melanie would recall the somewhat controversial hit, saying, "It was a time when people were reading things into lyrics. Some said it was sexual innuendo. I was just having a romp through my memory of learning how to ride my bike and roller skating." While she never again topped the charts, Melanie continued to record and perform well into her later years, maintaining a complicated relationship with the song that made her a household name. Speaking with Where Music Meets the Soul, she lamented that Brand New Key was, in her words, the song that doomed me to be cute for the rest of my life. On January 23, 2024, Melanie's children confirmed via Facebook that she had passed away from undisclosed causes the day prior. She was 76 years old. Alongside his sister Lori, Larry Collins shot to fame in the 50s as half of the duo The Collins Kids. He was only 9 years old when the pair became regulars on the country variety series Town Hall Party, and while 11-year-old Lori was ostensibly the star of their act as the vocalist, it was guitar prodigy Larry who was known to really wow audiences. A live-wire bundle of energy, he bopped around the stage slinging hot licks with his double-necked guitar, which had been gifted to him by his mentor, King of the Strings, Joe Maphis. So energetic was Collins' style that the punk rock website Please Kill Me credits him with recording the first punk record, Whistlebait, as a 13-year-old in 1958. A songwriter and composer in his own right, Collins' best-known tune is Delta Dawn, which he co-wrote with songwriting partner Alex Harvey. It became a signature song for Tanya Tucker, notched the #1 hit for Helen Reddy, and was covered by the likes of Bette Midler and Waylon Jennings. After the Collins Kids disbanded in 1965, Collins semi-retired from the stage, although he got together with his sister to perform again on a few occasions. Lori passed away in 2018, and on January 5, 2024, her brother followed her. He was 79 years old. The Shangri-Las were part of a wave of girl groups that took the pop charts by storm in the 60s. They made their mark largely due to the skills of producer Shadow Morton and the vocals of lead singer Mary Weiss, whose emotional borderline operatic style was a perfect fit for the group's anthems. In just a couple of years, between 1964 and 1966, they scored 4 top 20 hits. and one immortal classic, the #1 smash hit Leader of the Pack. Despite being only 15 when the song reached the top of the charts, Weiss projected a bad girl image quite unlike her girl group peers, and she and her group would later be cited as an influence by the likes of Amy Winehouse and the Ramones. Of her unpolished yet dramatically expressive vocal style, Morton once said that he required Weiss to be an actress, not just a singer, a task that she handled admirably well. The Shangri-Las last performed together in 1989, after which Weiss went to work for an architecture firm, finding time to release a solitary solo effort, Dangerous Game, in 2007. On January 19, 2024, Weiss passed away due to obstructive pulmonary disease. She was 75 years old. If you or anyone you know needs help with addiction issues, help is available. Visit the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration website or contact SAMHSA's National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP 4357.